Hello, my name is Darren Thomas and I'm the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this video, we're going to take a look get an introduction to sine and cosine functions. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, sine and the cosine function is basically where you take an input of an angle. So let me go ahead and draw you a picture here. An input of an angle, let's see here. You take an input of an angle, and what happens here is that, the function does something, either the sine function or the cosine function, not both. Let's not get confused. And the output that you get is, well, in the case of the sine, you get the output of the y on the unit circle, and in the case of cosine, you get the output of the x coordinate on the unit circle. This is what's happening. And so what we're trying to look at, we're going to try to see if we can figure out what's going on and where this came from, and just try to give you some basic ideas of what's happening here. Again, this is not an exhaustive study because this is just introduction and we don't want to make a very, very long video. But let me see if I can try to explain things as clearly as possible for you, because this can sometimes be a little confusing for people. So I'm drawing my unit circle right now. So here it is. It's not drawn to scale, obviously. And so what's happening here is that you have your initial side. We're just going to make this green right here. Then you have your terminal side, and then of course they kind of meet someplace going down like that. Now what's happening here is that you have an angle right here. We're just going to call it T. Angle T, and you have lots of other useful information happening here. So we have along this line here, we have an arc length. We're going to call this arc length T. That's what's happening here, arc length T. And then right here at the top, where the initial side and the terminal side kind of meet, this guy right here, let me give you another color here. This guy right here, we want these coordinates. This is kind of what the sine and cosine function is going to figure out for us, if you will. And so here are some basic things we need to think about first. Number one, we know this is a unit circle. So in other words, our radius is going to equal 1. All right, so now the next question we might have is, well, what's this length right here for arc length T? Well, we just use our formula. So for arc length is going to be S. That's what the S stands for, arc length. Radius times T. Okay, well, I know what my radius is. It's 1. So S is going to equal 1 times T, or S is going to equal T. In other words, in terms of radians, the value here for this angle here is going to be the same as for the arc length here. This is what we know at this particular moment. Now, moving on here, for the cosine, let me start with sine. So sine is always going to be, I'm going to just draw an arrow for this. Sine is always going to be found as the y value of the terminal side when it intersects with the unit circle. So that's going to be our sine. Okay, it's going to be the y value. Now, cosine is going to be, we're just going to draw, actually I have space right here. Cosine is right here, is this side right here, the adjacent side, if you will. I'm kind of foreshadowing a little bit. Cosine, in other words, is going to be the x value of the terminal side when it intersects with the unit circle. So this x value right here. Now, why it is like that, well, that's kind of beyond the video right now. For now, it's kind of like, okay, this is how it is, and the rationale and the reasoning behind this will come later. But when you understand these things, you know the following. Sine is the y value. The y value where the terminal side intersects with the unit circle, and cosine is the x value of the terminal side when it intersects with the unit circle. This is what it is. And basically what's happening here is that when you take the angle of T, when you take angle T and you plug it into the function, if you want to know the sine will tell you the y coordinate. If you want to know the x will tell you the y coordinate. And we will learn more about that in the future. So let's do one practical example here, or maybe two. We'll see how time permits. One practical example of this before we try to wrap this up. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I think my last circle was a little too small here. So here's my xy coordinates. Of course, it's not perfect. Never claimed that. And here comes my unit circle, which is also not perfect either. Okay, now imagine the following. I don't like it when I do that. Okay, imagine the following, if you will. So we're going to draw our information here. This is that's going to be the terminal side. This is the on the initial side right here. Okay, there we go with that. And so then we're going to have our angle T. This is our angle T. All right, and then we have the following coordinate at the top. Just follow what we just talked about. So 1/2, comma, square root of 3 over 2, like so. Now, if someone were to ask you, what is the cosine of this? What is the sine of this? Well, if you just take what we just talked about, you will determine it as follows. Sine is going to be the y value of the terminal side, which in this particular example is going to be right here. So if I want to do sine of t equals the square root of 3 over 2. Cosine, as we've already talked, is the x coordinate of the intersection of the terminal side with the unit circle. That's going to be 1/2. So for what we understand now, this is pretty much the end of the discussion. Again, we're going to build on this much more, but this kind of gives you an idea of sine and cosine and how they relate to the unit circle. And their purpose within the trigonometry on a very, very basic elementary level. So my name is, let me review first before I wrap up. So in this video we talked about sine and cosine and how you're able to determine what they are. Basically what's happening is that when you have an angle, in this particular example our angle was t. When you have an angle t, you can plug that number into the sine function or the cosine function, and for the sine function you will get the y coordinate that intersects with the unit circle for the terminal side, where it intersects with the unit circle. And if you use the cosine function, you will find the x value where the terminal side intersects with the unit circle. That's kind of what's happening there. And again, the detail behind that we will look at in a future video. And so in this example right here, we're still kind of working on an abstract level, but we have some coordinates, if you will. And so we found sine of t and cosine of t because we know what the y value and what the x values are, and it's just a matter of, oh, I forgot the t here, of following these ideas to figure out which one is which. And so in future videos we will build on this and try to give you a deeper understanding of what's happening. But for now, my name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. This is Thank you for watching. Take care.